Hey, everybody. Welcome in. It's Saturday morning. Well, actually, it's not. It's Friday night. But by the time you listen to this and maybe watch it on YouTube, it will be Saturday morning or later. It is Just Dubs with JD and Greg Silver, our off-season podcast. And I always say this sometimes on the radio, Greg. The show off the air can be better than the show on the air. And I think the show that we just did off the stream or off the air, so to speak, we're not on the air, might have been an all-timer.
The show we just did was it was tremendous. You know,
yeah, we just did
wish
it.
We could,
yeah,
wish we could have aired all of it, but there would have been a lot of Greg producing duties that involved going back, finding the censor button, you know, maybe figuring out how to reword some things. And look, I don't want to give everybody FOMO because the show we're about to do is going to be really good too. But yeah, hey, on the air, off the air, YouTube, Twitch, whatever, we're balling.
Well, and the stuff we were talking about, in fairness, is not really relatable to anything that's going on right now. I think we should say that. So it would be a little bit outdated if we aired it and highly unfiltered if we did. But we digress and jump in here with Just Dubs. Our final podcast edition before we're going to have a couple of shows over the air and a live YouTube stream as well. We've got the draft coming up Wednesday and Thursday of next week. It's now a 2-day event. The first round is going to be on Wednesday night. The second round is Thursday afternoon. They bumped it up a little bit. I'm not sure if you saw this. Originally, it was 4 o'clock Pacific. It's actually 4 o'clock Eastern now, 1 o'clock Pacific. So the second round is actually going to be, it's like a Thursday afternoon baseball day game or something. But we're going to be all over it on Wednesday when KMBR goes to Giants pregame on Wednesday for the Giants and the Cubs. We're going to hop on right at 5:45 and jump in with all the draft news and trade news, and we'll go right up until the end of the first round of the draft. Warriors don't have a pick, but you never know. Something could happen, and the Warriors are still going to be on the clock here with a number of decisions relating to their personnel. The next date up is Kevon Looney on Monday, the 24th. What do the Warriors do as far as guaranteeing him the full $8 million contract that he has for 2024-25, or there's an early termination where he would get paid $3 million on the Warriors books, but he would be cut. It would basically be a buyout and he would become a free agent. So stay tuned for some news on that over the next couple of days. And then a week from Friday on the 28th is where things sit right now as far as the Chris Paul decision, and that's the Warriors' decision as far as the option for $30.8 million for the 2024-25 season. What do the Warriors do there? Do they just keep Chris Paul? Do they keep and look to trade Chris Paul? Do they have a trade in the works, which means they pick up the option and then send him somewhere? We'll be all over all of that in just kind of setting the table, Greg, for Wednesday and Thursday. And then July 1, we've got a week from Monday, we've got another over-the-air sports phone. That'll be an NBA free agency special. So our Dubs OT free agency special on July 1st, our Dubs OT draft special over the air for round 2 when the Warriors pick Thursday 6 to 9, and then on YouTube only Wednesday at 5:45 and until we feel like it, breaking down all the NBA news. So a lot here going on over the next 10 days to 2 weeks, and then we'll be back on the podcast tip for anything that breaks in those first few days of July up until the holiday weekend when everything will become official.
It's all coming down to it. I'm a little bit antsy. I'm a little bit excited. I'm glad we get to have some shows coming up because, you know, these podcasts have been getting my fix in a little bit, but I kind of miss the rhythm of doing the shows, and I miss seeing everybody out on YouTube and possibly Harmonic Brewing if that comes to fruition with next week's shows. And yeah, I mean, Klay Thompson thing has certainly taken its appropriate level of drama with the negotiations and the Warriors and offering the contract. And now you got reports of what the Magic we're maybe looking to offer him, and we're about to get into that. Looney is going to be a big one on Monday. For Chris Paul, I expect that if they do pick up the option, it's probably going to be what you just said, JD. They are planning to trade him and have a possible trade in the works there. I don't see them picking up the option just to keep him on that same role and kind of run the whole thing back next year. And Klay's a big one, but it's kind of going to have to be the last domino to fall. And Gary Payton II just picked up his option, which was to be expected. So you can't have too much of the same roster and run it back when you head into this next year. If you want to be realistic about maximizing the end of this core's career, but that doesn't mean you need to completely tear it all down too. And they're not one move away from contending, but they could be a big move and two small moves, maybe two big moves, maybe three medium-sized moves, however you want to quantify different moves in free agency. But yeah, it really is all coming down to it, and there's going to be a lot that we have to unpack. Some of it's going to be in real time.
Yeah, we'll get to Klay. Let's just start with Gary Payton II opting in for the $9.1 million player option for the 24-25 season. To me, that was a no-brainer for him to do that. I know we talked about that on the last Just Dubs podcast. There was some thought that maybe he could opt out in the hope that the Warriors would do a longer-term deal. I thought that was absurd. Basically spread the money. Hey, you're not going to get your 9, but maybe you get 12 or something, or 15 over 3 years or something like that. Look, Gary Payton II has not been nearly available enough to be paying anything to beyond this year. So as much as 9.1 is more than probably makes the Warriors comfortable, it's 1 year. And they traded for that contract. They didn't sign him to that contract. Portland did. The Warriors ended up getting him back in the Wiseman deal and the 5 second-round picks and all that stuff going back to the middle of last year. But no surprise there. I think Payton immediately, it's twofold. It wouldn't surprise me if he winds up being part of a bigger trade as a player that would be inserted with 1 year left on his contract to help match salaries with a bigger ticket item. It also wouldn't surprise me if the Warriors just keep him for the year, knowing full well that he's probably going to play anywhere between 40 and 50 games and 15 to 20 minutes a game. And they'll be happy when they have him and he can be an effective on-ball defender, and they'll be disappointed when they don't. But I think they have to plan for the fact that if they do choose to keep him around, that it's the roll of a dice as to whether or not he'll be available in any sort of big game. So it's, again, you might want to have him. It might make sense to keep him, but you can't be dependent on him to be a regular member of the rotation. He has to be almost an extra piece of a rotation if he winds up being on the team.
And that's hard because last year you saw games in which he went out or got injured in. The one that's always going to stick brightest in my memory was the 24-point loss in the in-season tournament game to Sacramento. Both GP2 and Chris Paul left midway through that game, and they offered two different things, two very different skill sets that the Warriors really needed when trying to hold on to that lead that they ultimately kicked away and kind of got the monkey off of Sacramento's back. The Kings were undefeated against the Warriors from that moment, huh?
Yeah, the Kings did not lose to them again. They beat them in November, they beat them in January, and then they beat them in April in the play-in tournament to knock them out.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, well, it really was the difference maker in the end. But yeah, I mean, it's hard with Gary Payton II because when he is there, he does bring something which the Warriors immensely struggled with in perimeter defense. And Andrew Wiggins is kind of your only other reliable perimeter defender, but his play and his availability isn't necessarily reliable either. So that's what put the Warriors in a really tough spot. It's why teams had really good shooting nights against them. A lot of other teams' role players seem to really thrive against them, like your GG Jacksons got a bright young future in the league. So Yeah, I'd like to have him back, and I think it'll be good for the Warriors. But again, the move doesn't do enough for me to have much of a reaction beyond just like, okay, like see what happens with the rest of it.
Yeah, he's on the team. Again, I thought it was a no-brainer on his part, so we'll see. I mean, I could see him being included in another deal. If they wind up keeping him, again, he's not somebody that you can count on for any significant role. Let's move on to Klay Thompson. And a lot of different reports. There was the report from ESPN and Tim McMahon that the Warriors offered Klay a 2-year deal and that 2-year deal is on the table. Of course, we discussed last week the Monty Poole report and others also reporting the fact that Klay wants a 3-year deal. The 2-year, $48 million reported offer from early in the season seems to be the baseline, although there hasn't been any reporting as far as the money goes for where that 2-year deal would stand at this point for Klay. And then there was also some reporting earlier today furthering the story that the Magic unwilling to go beyond 2 years for Klay Thompson. And so all of this is tied together. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about Malik Monk, but I do think, Malik Monk, who went back to Sacramento last night for 4 years and $78 million, which was the maximum amount of money that the Kings could pay him under the collective bargaining agreement. I found that stunning. That he would go back without testing the market. But to me, and I said this to you last night in our text thread, to me, Monk going back tells me that the market for Monk was not what he thought it was probably going to be, and certainly not what I or the two of us thought it was going to be. Like, I thought Monk could get 3 and 75, 4 and 100, even maybe 3 and 90. As high as maybe 3 and 90 from a team like Orlando. I think it's clear, and I know the tampering and all of that, like teams are not allowed to talk to players and agents aren't allowed to talk to other teams and all that. I get it, but here's the reality check, folks. It's all going on right now. It's all going on right now. So to think that Malik Monk's agent wouldn't know the market before Malik Monk signs that $78 million deal with the Kings is just a fool's errand. If you believe that, it tells me that the money wasn't there. Let's bring it back to Klay Thompson. So he took the deal at a place where he was happy and went back. Good for Malik Monk. I think that's a hell of a get for the Kings at that level. Like, that's a win for them. It's in many ways a gift for them because, I mean, Malik Monk at under $20 million per year, I think is a hell of a deal for what he's provided for them. Back to Klay Thompson. Monk's deal leads me to Klay in two different ways. Is the reason the market for Malik Monk wasn't greater because teams maybe are allocating or prioritizing Klay Thompson ahead of him. And basically Monk knew that there was a team basically where Klay was probably going to go and that team wasn't going to have the money for him. Or does the fact that now Monk goes back and there are, teams with more teams with cap space available for Klay Thompson services, does that raise the level at which, Klay Thompson would need to be paid? Does that basically have his value go up? That's another part of it. And then the other part of it is, would teams that weren't willing to pay Malik Monk 4 and 100 or 3 and 85 to 90, would those teams be willing to pay Klay Thompson that money? Because I think at this point in time, Malik Monk's a better player. And so all of those things, let's get into all of those things, because I think it all relates. The Monk deal directly relates to Klay. And then it's also the report that even Orlando's unwilling to go beyond 2 years. I wouldn't be comfortable going 3 years on Klay. And so if Orlando's only willing to go 2, I think that might be the best sign for the Warriors' ability to be able to keep him. But I just wonder if the market for Klay, does it go up or down based on all of these things? I feel like it might go down, actually.
So many thoughts here. And I guess my first thought with Klay and turning down the 2-year deal with that report coming out was it's interesting because Steph's got 2 left on his deal. Steve Kerr just signed a 2-year extension. I know Draymond's deal right now goes 1 beyond that. So I'm thinking it's interesting that Klay wouldn't want a 2-year deal. And I know we referenced off the air the song Money, Power, and Respect. Be blasting that all week for Klay Thompson. But, and I get it. Like, it does come down to money and respect. And I can't be in the shoes of an NBA player who has made that kind of money and looking to end your career with any kind of measurement of what is fair and what, feels right in terms of what you've accomplished. However, I am fascinated by wanting at least a 3-year deal with the injury history he's had. Still a very capable player, but that was interesting. 2 is I don't know what way to go on the Malik Monk thing, and I'm inclined to go on the side of what you just said, which is Klay's market might be a little bit down, and especially that's kind of exacerbated by what we just heard from the Magic's camp today with they wanted an enhanced version of the Joe Ingles contract, which was, I think, 2 for 22 in that. And so I'm like, okay, maybe, but it's not out of the question. It's a fair thought that Malik Monk took money where he was happy with the situation. Mike Brown's going to be staying there. He's got his Kentucky guy, De'Aaron Fox. And all of a sudden it's like, I don't know, maybe there's a team out there that would prioritize Klay over Malik Monk. I mean, I think Monk, we would both agree, would be the more desirable free agent when you look at age, injury history. He still has that explosiveness. Maybe teams want the winning and championship DNA. Maybe they want more of the pure outside shooter. Like that right there is something that Orlando really lacked much more than they would have for the skill set of a Malik Monk. So originally I thought, okay, maybe that goes up. But now hearing that Orlando might not want to do much more than the Joe Ingles contract, that kind of puts me in a bit of a pickle where I'm thinking, okay, maybe Klay Thompson doesn't have a massive market out there.
Well, here's the other way to look at it. If Malik Monk now is a $19 million player, roughly, and Orlando reportedly would want to do a 2 and 22 for Klay Thompson. So that's also in line with Orlando believing that Klay Thompson's a lesser player than Malik Monk. If that's the case, like if Monk's a $19 million player and Orlando's at basically $11 million a year for Klay Thompson over 2 years, why the hell would the Warriors be offering at that point even 2 and 50? So I think that's where this all comes back to, and we can talk about disrespect. And I think people want to talk about the fact that the Warriors should just pay Klay Thompson because he's Klay Thompson. They're not good enough to just carry him. They're not good to just pay him just because he's one of the big 3 and pay him for the past and pay him for the memories. Like, they can't do that. This team has to get better. And if they sign Klay Thompson to a deal that makes it harder or impossible for them to make other moves to fix the roster to where they can become better, then they're just spinning their wheels and wasting their time and paying luxury tax that they are going to pay for a mediocre to mid team. So I think the Warriors' stance on Klay has been the 2 years and 48. That's your up pay. That's your we are overpaying you because of everything you've done. And seeing what Monk got, again, that was very specific to Sacramento. He had to take less to take less maybe than another place to go back there. And I don't think the offers were significant enough for him to strongly consider it, or firm enough to strongly consider it. I think he could have gotten more, and maybe even significantly more. But my guess is that the 3 and 85 or something like that, 4 and 100 for Monk was contingent on another team having something else fall through first. And I don't think Monk wanted to wait around for that, because if it didn't work out for him and let's say the team that he was going to sign with gets the other player, then all of a sudden he's got no leverage against Sacramento. Sacramento can lower their offer from Sacramento's max. So, but bringing them all back together, if Malik Monk's a $19.3 million player per year and Orlando's offer to Klay is $11 million per year, if you're the Warriors, because I think the Warriors' stance on this thing the whole time has been, Klay, go test the market if you want to. And we'll pay you accordingly. Go do it. And I think Klay's pissed off still that the Warriors are making him do it rather than just paying him. And look, it's an unfortunate situation based on nostalgia and everything that he's brought to the table. But I've said this before, and you know where I'm going with it. It sucks for him that he's the first guy who's come up to get paid that's significantly and obviously declined of the big three. And so that means he has to be the first of the guys to take the significant pay cut compared to what he was making before. And even if he winds up making 24 or 25 million a year, that's going to be a significant pay cut over what he's made these last couple of years. So, and here's the other thing I think if the Warriors, so to me, if the Warriors offer was 2-24 or 2-48, two times 24, and you look at maybe the Orlando market and what Monk got, that offer, if I'm the Warriors, might have gone down. It sure as hell wouldn't have gone up, and it might have gone down, and it might go down contingent on some of the other things that the Warriors have cooking. Again, I go back to what I said last week. It wouldn't surprise me if the Warriors said, Klay, we're working on some big things because we want you back, but you coming back alone does not make us better. So we have to go do X and Y. But if we go do X and Y, you've got to come back, take this certain amount, and take on a different role. And that's what's going to make us a better team. And I think that pissed him off too. And I think maybe he's getting more and more frustrated at the fact that his market isn't necessarily what it is, or that the Warriors are forcing him to go prove it. Go prove it. Go prove that somebody's going to give you 3 years. Go prove that somebody's going to give you 90 million, and then we'll match it or not match it based on, the circumstances of the day at that particular point in time.
So you kind of just touched on what was sort of going to be my next question to you, because I totally agree with the fact that it stinks for Klay that he's the first of the big three where this scenario's come up. Draymond Green has had off the court issues and suspension issues. I don't even want to say off the court issues. That makes it sound like he's gotten in legal trouble, but you all know what I mean. On the court issues that have led to him being off the court. There you go. That's the way to put it. Draymond has had issues of not being available for his team that Klay has not had. And except for the, Jaden McDaniels jersey rip, blah, blah, blah. But Klay is much more unfortunate circumstances that he himself could not control. What I was kind of wanted to ask you, and you did just go into this a little bit, is how much of Klay being upset do you think is just based on him being sour that the Warriors are maybe going to make him test the market and that he's been put in this position from the get-go? And how much of this do you think has to do with a discussion they've had about the role he would have to take? Is this strictly just the money and the disrespect layer, or have we also gotten to the Klay, you got to play 24 minutes a night and you're coming off the bench and maybe you'll close, but probably not on a lot of nights?
I think it's both. I also think it has the potential to be a fluid situation, and he may not like the fact that it's a fluid situation. It may be, hey, Klay, depending upon who we get in a trade, you may come off the bench, you may start. We don't know, but we want you to be happy with whatever it winds up being. We go get Zach LaVine or DeJounte Murray, you're coming off the bench. If we don't do that, maybe you'll have a chance to start, or maybe we just think you're better off as a sixth man and we're going to start Podziemski anyway. And look, I don't want to, this is where I don't really want to go in terms of speculation and all of that, but for all we know, I'll say it though, for all we know, it pisses him off that Brandon Podziemski's the guy that, again, not that he doesn't like Podziemski, but it's wait a minute, you're the second year guy starting over me, I could see that potentially rubbing him the wrong way. And look, he accepted it in the back half of last year until there were some injuries and he went back into the starting lineup. But just because he accepted it for the back half of last year didn't mean that he was going to accept it moving forward. And, that's the part where I think there's been some difficult conversations here, maybe over the last couple of weeks that have sent him down a road of being really, really upset. I'm looking at the market, and I think there is from, I think, some others in the media, and I think from fans, certainly, it's like, just get it done and pay him. And the Warriors, it's not that they're penny pinching, because I don't think that they're penny pinching, but they're trying to not overpay for someone that's been as volatile a player on the court as he's been in terms of production, when they know themselves that just signing him and bringing him back into the fold isn't good enough. Like that's what this is about from the Warriors standpoint. It's you can't, if it goes back to, if you pay Klay Thompson $90 million, over 3 years, and it prevents you from making any kind of move to where you're basically running it back with the same team that you had, well, that ain't good business. At that point, you might as well just let him go. Here's the other thing. I think the Warriors would be open to a 3-year deal for Klay, but it's not. It's a 3-year deal that means that the AAV is less. Like, we're going to give you if the Warriors were comfortable with 2-48, that doesn't mean it's 3-72. It means it's 3-60 or 65, something like that. It's not. It's we're going to give you the 3rd year. Or
3-33 soon.
We're going to give you the 3rd year, but it's or maybe it's 3-50. I don't know. I'll say 3-60. That's basically and again, the 2-48 may be gone, because the Warriors right now, and it may piss Klay Thompson off, and I understand it, but I'll go back to what I've said a couple of times already. If Malik Monk is a $19.3 million player, and the best offer for Klay on the market that we know about is $11 million a year, then as far as I'm concerned, the Warriors don't have to offer him much more than maybe $15 million a year, $15 to $20 million a year, depending upon the length of the contract. They no longer have to go into that 25 plus range until somebody makes them do it. And remember, what have we heard? What have we heard as far as, I think somebody's going to offer him the bag because they want. I don't think there's this team out there that views Klay as a veteran leader. I think they view him as a shooter. I don't think they view him as championship experience in terms of leadership. I don't even think teams are necessarily wanting to pay for that, because he's basically, if you watch him, a chucker. He's going to come in and he's going to take, he hasn't taken on that role with the Warriors. I mean, so why would you expect him to take on that role with Orlando or Philadelphia?
I get what you're saying, that he's never had that personality in the locker room for the Warriors, of being that veteran leader.
No, he's never been a negative. That I will say.
But if you're the Orlando Magic with all those young guys and nobody who has even really won a playoff series for that matter, you don't think there's any value in Klay, what he's done in elimination games and game 6s, and knowing what it takes, and arguably being the more clutch warrior in a lot of games than his Splash Brother counterpart to get to the top?
I mean, I think there would be, had his last 2 elimination games not been catastrophic. So yeah, I don't know. What do you turn your camera off for? No. I think you look at the last couple of games or the last couple of elimination games, and I think that makes it a different scenario altogether. I think that's the decline. You're not like that. Yes, you would be paying forget about leadership, but I think you're spot on in terms of the clutch factor and all of those things. But he hasn't been that, even his production in those instances, the last 2 playoff years, has gone down. And so I think he's a declining player in that area as well in terms of his overall value in terms of, because you're right, it's not about leadership necessarily. It's about production in big bright lights moments, which he provided the entirety of his career up until these last two elimination games, which have been highly publicized. Everybody's watched him, talked about him. It's become kind of an internet meme kind of a thing. So I don't think teams are necessarily paying for that now. I think they're paying for him to, as a guy that could be great, could be terrible in any big game.
Yeah. No, I mean, okay, I'll give you that one. Like on the what they're paying for.
His clutch numbers have declined. His clutch gene is kind of, I don't want to say gone away because he still has the gene, but he's not invincible in the clutch anymore.
No, and what you're saying is you don't see him as the type of personality that could mentor a young shooter or a young shooting guard and kind of elevate them into being a big time playoff performer.
I mean, I don't. I really don't. I see a guy who, and again, I don't think he was. I don't want this to come off like I'm saying he's a bad teammate or anything like that.
No.
I just think some guys just show up and do their thing, and that's fine. And I think Klay shows up and does his thing, and it is maybe complimentary of a young player when he does something well, but I don't think he's a leader in that respect. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. I don't think he's I don't think he's mentoring Franz Wagner. I don't think he's mentoring Franz Wagner, to be a better clutch performer, because he had his own elimination game issues.
Yeah, I think there's fairness to that. I'm good with that. I just got to hash out the discussion a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, come at me, bro. No, I'm kidding. No, it's going to be interesting but it also makes me think, to kind of tie up the Klay conversation. It also makes me wonder if the numbers are that. I mean, it's not surprising if the numbers are that low, going back to Monk and maybe the Orlando offer, but it still only takes one team to up the ante. And if one team ups the ante, then I think the Warriors could quickly still wind up in a position where they're trying to match at the last minute, and maybe Klay says too little too late. But what the Warriors are also betting is that Klay, in his heart of hearts, still wants to stay. He just wants to stay for what he deems to be a respectable amount, and the Warriors are intent on making him go get it before they. To me, it's just simple negotiation, and we can have the debate as to whether or not Klay Thompson should be subject to that, given his history with the team and everything that he's done to help a dynastic run. But I think the Warriors are not looking at it that way. The Warriors are looking at it more under the lens of the player that he is now and everything else that they have to do to make this team better. And they're not going to just spend for the memories at this point. They're not going to do it. Like maybe 2 years ago they would have, but those days are over.
Yeah. I mean, you can't run it back. I think the one thing, and I think I've said this on some of the earlier off-season podcasts, or maybe I've just said it off the air to you like 5 times. The best part about them losing in convincing fashion in the first play-in game, to me, from the Warriors standpoint, is you don't go into the offseason with a sense of delusion. Yes, you won 46 games. Yes, you turned it around when everyone figured out their role and people were more comfortable with the rotation, but you beat up on a lot of bad teams. You had no fight against the top teams in the entire league, and you weren't even a game away from sniffing the playoffs in the end. So you can't just run it back with the notion of, well, 46 games would have made you a top 8 or top 6 seed in a lot of years.
Let me tell you what else you can't say. You can't say if Draymond had played more games, they would have won 55. You can't say that either.
Well, and as we've pointed out, Steph Curry, you can't count on to play 74 games.
No doubt. And Steve Kerr already kind of hinted at the fact that they need to play him less. It's like how are you going to save money, pay Klay, get better, play Steph less by design, play Klay less by design, and get better? Like it's in some ways it's impossible. I think, but here's the thing, and I think Warrior fans have to understand this. I think we all have to understand this. The Warriors, and I think they are looking at probably 8 or 10 different plans. I think they've got, if we try to get this guy, then it means we can pay Klay this. Here's who's going to have to go. Here's who's we're going to have left. If we take on this contract, it means Looney and Payton have to go. If we take on that contract, it means Wiggins might have to go. If we take on this contract, it's going to be Chris Paul. If we want this player, we don't want to give up Kuminga, and it's not a future Hall of Famer necessarily, in his prime. But you know what? We might have to give up Kuminga, even though we don't want to give it to. I think they have all of those scenarios right now mapped out. I don't think they know necessarily which direction they're going to go, but there is no freaking way this can be Klay's coming back and Chris Paul goes away and Podziemski's going to start and Kuminga's going to make another leap and you're going to win 55 games. Like it just they have to change the mix. But it also can't just be change the mix for change's sake. They've got to be pretty calculated and deliberate about it. So no, I think they're going to make a move at some point that is going to be taking a risk, but also to where you can see a vision for if this works out, they can be in the top 4 in the Western Conference. But there's going to be a risk to where it might not work out and you might end up in a worse position than even you were this past year. But the only way you can get into that top 4 is to take the risk. And so if they're unwilling to take the risk, then they're going to be a different version of what they've been the last 2 years. And it's going to frustrate the hell out of everybody.
I'll say 2 things. One is if you end up trading Kuminga for a situation that can maybe get you to like a 7 or 6 seed, absolutely not worth it. Right? Like you would trade Kuminga because you're like, hey, we could be a top 4 team and we really think we can go for this because
I would trade Kuminga for somebody who is a clear-cut, bona fide number 2 for the next 2 to 3 years. Period. That's like, I'm not even putting a seed on, but then you would have to build the rest of the roster to be good enough to be top half, maybe or at least top 6 in the Western Conference.
Do you want to know what my thing that needs to happen with the way things currently stand? If I could pick one thing that could happen for the Warriors to be a much more competitive team with the roster that as is, and this might not be fair to say because we have no idea what this player will be doing or what you get out of this player, but if Andrew Wiggins is available and returns to 75% of what he was in 2022, that goes a long way. I'm just saying, because last year the team was both too old and too young when it came down to it. And Wiggins is going to be 29 years old for the majority of this next season. He still can defend at a high level. His offense was nowhere to be found a lot of nights, and that was a big bummer because he doesn't need to score 25 a night, and it's great that Kuminga had a lot more production, but you need him to at least shoot at an efficient enough rate from beyond the arc and to drive and get going early offensively. And the Steve Kerr discussion is a very slippery slope, but I will just say this. When Steve Kerr kind of said at the end of the season, I need to do a better job of setting our guys up offensively and can't run the same system that was working when he first took over, that's absolutely one of his biggest challenges going into next year. You have to find ways to get a Podziemski or a Wiggins or a Kuminga super early in the game getting going so that it's not just, all right, Steph, why don't you carry us down the stretch? And, I hope Klay, if you're still here, I hope you can have it tonight.
They've got to be more, I think, game-to-game matchup specific as opposed to just playing a system that they want to play throughout the year and let the chips fall where they may. When you're the most talented team in the league, you can play your system, and more often than not, it's going to work out. They can't do that now. They have to be more, hey, we're playing Team X tonight, and they can't handle Kuminga. So that night, we are going to maybe isolate Kuminga a little bit more. But there's also half the league that you can't do that against. So it doesn't mean you're going to do it every night. But some nights when he has a matchup advantage, and we've seen some of the matchup advantages that he's had throughout, and a lot of the times it's against the crappier teams. Let's just be honest. Like, that's a lot of his best games are against lesser teams. That's fine. Or against more like opponents, younger players in the league, younger teams that are basically of his experience level. Well, that's when you use him to where he can be his most successful. I think it's got to be, if Wiggins is on the team, it's got to be looked to get Wiggins involved earlier. It's got to be looked to get him more opportunities on that left wing to drive right and get downhill and get to the basket that way. It's got to be more corner threes, not necessarily him standing in the corner, but more corner threes if he's going to be on the team. So I think that's all important, but I think it goes into being more matchup specific. It's more, hey, this is what we have to do tonight to beat Utah. And this is what we have to do tomorrow night to beat the Clippers. And it might be two different things. And that's where I do think the Warriors have not maybe been their most efficient. But again, they have to plan all of that around the fact that Steph probably won't play as much, and they're trying to limit Klay's minutes if Klay winds up coming back, and play the young guys and all these other different things. But I do think they're looking at some big moves. I do think they're looking at getting. I'll say this. This is what I was going to say about your Wiggins point. I'm with you on that. As far as Wiggins being able to level up helps a lot. Wiggins is not. You can't count on Wiggins. I'm not saying you're saying this, but to me, you can't count on Wiggins to be the two. Like your contingent can't be Wiggins is going to get back to, because he really wasn't the 2 years ago. Like he might have been the second best player, but nobody told him he was the second best player ahead of time. And if you tell him he's the second best player ahead of time, he's not going to live up to being the second best player. Like you can't
add one.
You can't tell Wiggins go be the second best player. Damn it! Like that will have the opposite effect.
Yeah, no. I fully agree with that. And the thing I want to add, which is totally unrelated,
you also can't tell Kuminga go be the second best player for the opposite reason.
I want to hear your take on this in a live reaction, because I've never run this by you. This is not important, but since we're having an off-season podcast, I figure why not? I get so annoyed when I hear the notion of Andrew Wiggins was arguably the finals MVP in 2022, or he could have been the final. He was so far and away the second most important player. Finals MVP was very, very, very clearly one guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when people are like, I mean, this was like a finals MVP, Wiggins. No, it wasn't. No, it was not.
No, it wasn't. And again, forgive me, I never remember these votes, but Steph was unanimous, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say he should have. I was there. I remember seeing it, but it was like, yeah, okay. I thought Steph was unanimous, but I just wanted to confirm that he should have been. Not to get off on a finals MVP tangent, but Jaylen Brown won it, and Jaylen Brown deserved to win it. I was surprised at the Jason Tatum agendas. That was weird. Like I had no idea who would. I'm not coming down anybody's road specifically, but it's like Jason Tatum was third. Like if you want, like it was in my ballot would have been Jaylen Brown. At the end of the day, it would have been Drew Holiday, and it would have been Tatum at that point. I think you vote for 3. Maybe you're right. I think you do first, second, third. That would have been my ballot. I think that's how they actually do the ballot. Like you do a 1, 2, 3, and then you get points. Or no, that's not how they do that ballot. They do no, they don't. It's just 11 people is how they do that ballot. And then they have their one vote. Yeah, my bad on that. No, they have the one. There's other voting where they do the point system. But yeah, my that would have been my order. I would have voted for Jaylen Brown, who definitely deserved it.
I think Jaylen Brown for sure. I mean, the defense he played on Luka Doncic, obviously, and then what it came down to was showing up in the most important of moments, particularly shutting the door in Game 3 and essentially ending the series.
Yeah, no question. So, good on Jaylen Brown. Congratulations.
And because my parents graduated from the same school that Jaylen Brown attended, I would be executed if I didn't say that.
Whoa. Okay. That's not many Cal finals MVPs. That's it. Like, I don't know. Has there ever been one? I don't know. Probably not.
I don't think so.
Off the top of my head, not in my lifetime. Jason Kidd never won it.
I was going to say Jason Kidd's the only one that comes to mind as who could have won it.
Yeah. No. So, well, I mean, there could have been somebody like in the 50s or something.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, people forget, like, Bill Russell went to San Francisco. like people forget that. Like what? Bill Russell went to San Francisco. So it's like there could have been a Cal guy that we're forgetting that was like a great player 60 years ago or something. But yeah, people forget that. Yeah, people forget that Bill Russell went to USF. So
go Dons.
Go Dons. All right, what haven't we gotten to here? I'm looking at the list. We've talked about GP. We've talked about Klay a lot. I know you'd mentioned maybe getting into the Paul George quote. Let's talk a little bit about Caruso going to the Thunder from Chicago for Josh Giddey. What a bargain Alex Caruso is at under $10 million for this next year before he becomes a free agent.
So this trade was straight up, no picks.
I had to triple check that today. I think there might be when it's actually final, because remember, it's not going to be final until, so sometimes things get added when they go final. But no, I actually triple checked it today. It was straight up because Giddey was the 6th pick in the 2021 draft. He got picked right before Jonathan Kuminga at 6, and the Warriors picked 7 and took Kuminga. And no brainer for OKC. I mean, Giddey had fallen out of favor. He wasn't finishing playoff games. They have 4, 5, 6 better players already. Who they will have to pay. But it's also like, it's easier to palate when you have 5 or 6 good young players that are already in your rotation. It's easier to palate trading a guy you took at number 6 for a role player. But they traded the 6th pick in the 2021 draft for a role player. So, like, when you look at the market for getting a role player, it's of guy who's in his prime, that's got championship experience, that's a two-way player, that's a smart player. Like the you got to give up something to get. And I'm not saying it was the Warriors had interest and made an offer, and it was reported basically the Bulls wanted Kuminga back at the trade deadline, and that was right as Kuminga was starting to explode in the back half of this season, although he really wasn't totally there yet. It was, he'd had a few games, but the explosion really took off after that. But look, I would not have given up Kuminga for Caruso. I think I understand the fact that if you're the Warriors, you'd be really uncomfortable doing that. And because you think that he should net a greater talent if you're going to wind up trading him. So I don't have a problem with the Warriors ultimately deciding not to do that, especially given what Kuminga did throughout the remainder of the season before he got hurt at the end. So, but at the same time, I think we all need, and I think the Caruso thing is a reality check as to what it takes to get quality championship caliber role players. And also, if it takes that to get a quality championship role player, what does that mean it takes to get a potential number 2 option on your team? So that was my big Caruso takeaway. Great trade for OKC. I think it's fine for Chicago too, because they're going to be in a rebuild. So you might as well take on a young. I mean, he basically goes into a rebuild situation, or at least a retool situation. We'll see what they do with DeRozan and Levine and everybody else. But I think that makes sense both ways to make that deal.
Yeah, and it was interesting, the report that came out that Caruso, they were told not to trade him at the trade deadline in order to make a playoff push, and then they finished in the exact same zone as the Warriors did.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
He would have helped. He's the kind of player. He's the kind of player that you want to have to fill out the rest of the roster after you end up, finding who your second player is going to be. So I almost think the Warriors are going to have to, because they're not going to be able to make multiple trades. Really, I would imagine they're going to have to get that guy. They're going to have to get that guy and maybe get the bench guy in the same deal. Even if they don't come from the same team, it might have to all be one deal where it's you're getting this role player from team X, you're getting your number 2 from team Y, and you're sending players a couple of different places to get that done. So I again, in line with my thinking that the Warriors have the big board up of 8 to 10 different scenarios. But it's all the names that we've mentioned. We'll get into some more specific names on Wednesday when we do our draft show, because that's going to be a draft show, but it's really going to be just it's going to be our next Just Dubs. Unless something crazy happens here with Klay in the next couple of days, we will try to sneak in a quick emergency pod if we can, if something happens on the Klay Thompson front or on the Chris Paul front, because those decisions are gonna be coming here, and there could be some Kevon Looney news over the weekend with that deadline coming up on Monday as well. So I think we can call it on that note. Did you want to get into Paul George real quick?
Nah, I think we're good. It was a good show.
Yeah.
Podcast P. We have our own podcast,
Yeah, no. So yeah, I'll just, final thoughts to you off a lot of my ramblings tonight. But I think, good show, good thoughts, good back and forth. I know people get frustrated sometimes. Mention names. We want names, specific names. We've done a lot of mentioning specific names. I don't think it's constructive every time we're on to basically play trade machine. I think we've done a lot of that. I think we will do more of it next week. But I thought tonight was kind of the night to not get into, would you do this guy for that guy? Would you try we've talked about all of these guys, and I'm all in on most of them. It's if they're going to walk onto the Warriors and be the second best player, and then you build it from there. So yeah, final thoughts, my man.
Yeah, no, just a good, fun show. Good to keep this rolling. And I don't know, I guess I'll just end by saying this, that there's a lot of antsiness in the air with the Warriors, and just a lot of different sectors of fan groups that support X, Y, and Z. I just want to further reiterate, we don't really have some agenda going on here. We want to work through a lot of different scenarios. We want to.
No, we're agenda free.
Make it fun, but at the same time, we just try to use what we know, people we've talked to, and what is realistic for this current state of Golden State, which could look a lot different come a week, but I don't really know exactly what to expect right now.
Yeah, I think they're going to do something in the next 2 weeks that's dramatic. Whether that's Klay's gone, whether that's Wiggins gets traded, or whether it's Kuminga's in some other deal, if they can do it. I don't think they want to do that. But I do think they're going to change the complexion of the team. I don't think it's going to be half the roster, but I do think they're going to shuffle the deck a little bit because they know that they can't run it back one more time and have it be constructive. But yeah, no, if anything, Greg, sometimes we piss people off because we don't have an agenda. And that's just the reality of the situation. So yeah,
final question.
Call it like you see it. That's all you can do.
Final question. Do the Edmonton Oilers complete this 3-0 comeback in the Stanley Cup final?
I kind of feel like they're going to. No, I you know what? I think Florida's going to win. I think Florida's going to hold their mud. I know the momentum is all like, I don't feel like there's truly momentum in hockey like that. I think Florida's going to win. I think Florida wins Game 7. But wow, would that be an all-timer if Edmonton does come back and win?
I'll take history. I'll take Edmonton.
Okay. Yeah, I mean I'll tell you I'm gonna be watching Game 7 Monday night.
Yeah.
I know that. That's but yeah, that would truly, I know we knew that the Mavs weren't going to be the team when they went down 0-3, but hey, we didn't say that Edmonton couldn't be the team. We didn't say Edmonton couldn't do it when they got down 0-3.
If we were getting ready for Game 7 of a finals right now, I'd be stunned.
Yeah, I would have been big time stunned. And look, Boston deserved it. More good players. I mean, just a really well-built team. I know I've said this to you. I like seeing teams that have built it and stuck with it in terms of their main guys. Even when things had the ability to get weird, they pushed through and added to the roster, got better on the fringes, and it helped them get over the top with Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And it's the Derek Whites, and it's the Drew Holidays, and it's the Porzingis. It's those guys that really, in addition to Horford, who they had and then went away, then they brought him back and all of that. It's those moves. You need to have your main guys, and then you need to have those other guys. And the Warriors, when they were winning titles, had those other guys. And so, that's my biggest takeaway as it relates to, obviously the Celtics are in a different place right now, much younger team, players in their prime, role players more in their prime, a couple of OG guys, but the formula is not rocket science when it comes to younger stars, but the league is trending now where you got to have some depth and you got to have good role players. And the Celtics, they mastered that. And it really is what did Denver in. Denver had more of that last year than they did this year, and it bit them against Minnesota. And, that I think led to, obviously Boston having a better chance to win because they ended up playing Dallas and not maybe Denver as a potential, champion. But yeah, good stuff, Greg. That'll do it. We'll talk to you Wednesday with our Dubs OT draft special round 1 here for KMBR, the sports leader.